Hi, Larry K here with ShadowAnyone.com. I'm also the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. This week I want to talk to you about body cameras and a phenomenon that now that they're being in use for a little while is coming out, and people seem to have trouble understanding what this phenomenon is and why it's going on. But I know the answer because I've been there, done that. I can explain it to you. So what they're seeing now, as they're getting some statistically significant experiences with body cameras and use of force, is they're finding that the use of body cameras by law enforcement are lowering the use of force incidents that are out there. But when force is used, it's greater force than's been used in the past. And I think I understand why this works because of the times that I've worked as not as law enforcement, but as security, as a first offender, working both on private property, out on the streets, and if you follow me for a while, you know these types of things that I've done. But you know, when you work, especially for example, let's talk loss prevention. People can understand this, but I'll bring you back to working like on the streets, doing a foot patrol. You know, I personally very reluctant to use physical force at all, or even any kind of physical contact, because it tends to escalate the situation. It can be misinterpreted. In this day and age, it looks bad on camera. So I really refrain from using any kind of physical force or touch at all. Now the problem with this is that the bad guys take this as a sign of weakness. They figure if you're not doing anything, or if you're taking the abuse from them, verbal or even some light things like just maybe a little push or a shove, that they've got the upper hand. And unfortunately, when that happens, the situation does escalate. The bad guy escalates it, you see. And really, they have the advantage because they always get the option to escalate it. As a good guy, you're never going to use any more force than's necessary, but the bad guy gets to choose what level of force that is. So without a body camera, without filming of some kind, if you know you're under a surveillance camera, especially one you have control of, like working, say, loss prevention, you know there's a camera pointed right here, you know you are for sure on camera. That's really a good spot to be in, because it's not going to become a he said, she said situation, not you against the bad guy. Who throws the first punch, who gets physically aggressive, what happens is all recorded, and I love that. So here's the thing. Without the recording, without the video, I tend to take a little more guff and abuse than I should. I take more, and you know, I run the risk that the person's going to escalate the situation because they feel like they have the upper hand because I'm not responding physically. When there is a body camera, or I know there's other video, but specifically I'll talk about when I've used body cameras. When the time comes for me to use physical force, I do not hesitate, because I know I can totally prove that I am defending myself, that the use of force is necessary and reasonable. So, in other words, there's more use of force incidents with body cameras because you don't have to hold back to the point where it really does get out of hand. But the use of force can be stronger because you can use the amount of force you need to end the danger, both for yourself and for the bad guy and for the people around you. You see, again, without a camera, the temptation is to maybe just try to dissuade the person, to push the person away, that type of thing. But with the camera, when you can prove that you're in the right, then you can use the moves that you've been trained in, that you've practiced in, that you know are going to end the situation. And I don't mean you know, kicks and blows and punches and aggressive things like that. I like to think that if you're watching this, you understand I'm talking about reasonable and necessary measures. You run into this all the time when people talk about punishing children. They say, you know, I think it's okay to swat a child on the bottom every now and then. Now, I don't mean you should beat them. And it's ridiculous that we have to add that in every time, because of course nobody thinks you should beat children. That's ridiculous. But you know, we make that same mistake when we start talking about use of force with first offenders or law enforcement against bad guys. You know, the fact of the matter is you have to use the amount of force, the minimum amount of force that's necessary to stop the situation and protect people. But of course, you're not going to go beyond that. If you do, that's a crime. You have just become the bad guy. The beauty with body cameras is, and other video, is it becomes increasingly easier for us to see when that happens. One caveat, one thing I want to add on to the end here is, if you're an outsider, if you've never been there and done that, then there's a lot of ways to look at this video and second guess and say, oh, the officer should have done that, the security guard should have done this or that. You know what? The standard that's being used in the court system, the standard that we've laid down by statute and by precedent in the courts, is the law enforcement officer in the moment. So, you know, you, with the luxury of knowing how things turned out, can't second guess that. I'm not saying we don't hold people to standards and issue justice. We absolutely do. Abuse, those types of things, not tolerated at all. You should go to jail just like the bad guys, because you've become a bad guy. This is Larry K. If you have any comments, thoughts, anything, hit up the comments below. I always, anytime we talk about use of force, there's always a bunch of people that have a perspective, a point of view. It's kind of interesting to see the different perspectives out there. This is Larry K. with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.